Good afternoon, welcome to Market Wrap number 155. Stuart Williamson here at the helm. Why do we do it? Why do I do it? Oh, God knows, I wonder sometimes. But sometimes just share newsworthy items that time-poor people might find useful. That's what it's all about. So do like, share, all that sort of stuff. This week we're going to be looking at what's going on in the bond markets, what's going on with interest rates in the UK, and what's going on with immigration. So firstly, South Sudan, Argentina. What do we know about them? Well, South Sudan is the newest country in the world, I'm told. It was only recognised in 2022, commenced in 2011. Argentina, this South American nation, is battling inflation at 109%, one of the highest in the world, and a central bank poll estimates it will go to 130% by the end of the year, and interest rates have been hiked to 97%. We think we've got it bad. What we do know is that they're the only two countries in the world who have core inflation that has risen more than the UK. The UK has risen by 6.2% to 6.8%, and this has thrown the bond markets into turmoil, hence what's going on at the moment with the interest rates. Why? Why has this happened? Because despite inflation falling overall in April to 8.7%, according to ONS data published last week, prices are still rising above the Bank of England's 8% forecast. More worryingly, core inflation, a measure of the domestic price changes, increased to 6.8% in April, the highest level since 1992. Can you believe it? Which is why the government's borrowing costs are surging. People are seeing this and going, we're going to have to lend them more, we have to charge them more because they're not trustworthy. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt now appears to have resigned himself and the country to the fact that Britain will follow Germany into recession as a result of his attempts to keep inflation under control. It'll probably go up by 0.5% interest rates, which is not great. Okay, especially after the IMF gave us a thumbs up. What should they do as mortgage rates are definitely increasing over the next 3 months? Brokers are generally in agreement at. The major lender nationwide raised its mortgage interest rates by 0.45% last week, while others have pulled all their products in an effort to reprice them. The average 2-year fixed rate has, according to Moneyfacts, also gone up considerably. Mortgages are priced on swap rates and gilt yields, which have both been on the rise recently. Richard Bishop, Managing Director at advice firm PFEP Wealth Management, said that US debt ceiling is intrinsically linked to gilt yields right now. He explains gilt yields have gone from being 4.2% to 4.35%. The market wants more value for lending to the US government because this has heightened the risk of default. This is pushing up prices in the short term, and borrowing for governments is therefore becoming more expensive, including the UK. In the short to medium term, however, this could be working in borrowers' favour, Mrs. Bishop said, as a lot of lenders will need to remain competitive if they want to make their cash work on a regular basis. They don't want to buy gilts because if they do, they have to hedge them. Because the gilt market is volatile, it can make them lose money. So even if rates reach 5.5% or more, this will only be reflected in the market in the very last instance. So they won't pass on interest rate rises to the customers. The Bank of England getting inflation predictions wrong by as much as 0.3% is also a problem, and is also putting up interest rates because people are unsure of what they're all about. Mr. Bishop reckons markets are pricing 0.5% rise over the next quarter, which I said myself, before again we start to see it coming down. Now we don't know this for sure, and in October last year it was the end is nigh, and it really did look like that. And again, it's like we've got a repeat of this. Chris Sykes, director at the Mortgage House Private Finance, said he was looking at the second half of the year. Basically lenders have been upping the amounts borrowers can repay, which is a positive thing. NatWest are increasing their annual repayment levels from 10% to 20% without penalty. And it's interesting because as an expatriate, we tend to have more disposable income, which should allow us to do this sort of thing. So the advice should be overpay your mortgage, keep repayments lower. Banks are allowing it now. If you're going to get a mortgage and buy a new property, apply for a decision in principle now. Don't wait till later. Mr. Sykes goes on to comment, this at least gives buyers a guide to what is feasible if they do that, as mortgage rates are quite volatile at the moment. However, with rents increasing and now less scary comments coming out about house price crashes, buying for many first-time buyers is still an attractive thing to do. Okay, so let's look at one of the factors that might hold the UK housing market up. 2022, 606,000 immigrants arrived in the UK. That's a big, big number, and it's a record for the calendar year. Leaders of both main political parties want it to be smaller, even if they won't say what they think it should be. Now, it's important to know that this is a number very much set by the government. Now, I'm going to show you some figures now. Some of this data isn't entirely correct because we've had to draw it from different sources, and so it isn't comparable, but it gives you a broad idea and a broad trend. At the end of 2019, overall non-EU immigration overtakes immigration from the EU, so non-EU immigration greater. It then soars with the Brexit effect and the government setting new terms of entry, and this is why non-EU immigrants numbers have gone through the roof. Okay, so if you look at the blue line, the light blue area, you see people are getting work visas, and this is a huge part of the growth in the health and care worker sector. Remember all the staff shortages we've been having in the NHS? Well, this is an attempt to plug that gap, let in people who are qualified to do this. Study visas are the same, dark blue, the deliberate government policy to attract bright young people from around the world and the billions in fees they bring in, and hopefully they'll stay. There's also been a big jump in the purple area, that is humanitarian visas, compared to the year before. That's people from the Ukraine, Hong Kong, Afghanistan, those sort of areas, and that's a policy that has got a lot of public support, so that will continue. So back to the big number, 600,000. In fact, it's nearly as big as adding an entire Glasgow to the country in the space of a year in terms of population. However, there's also a useful way of thinking about the impact of what it would take to support Glasgow. The city has 9 hospitals, 140 primary schools, 300,000 houses. And that's not a direct comparison because immigration is different from existing people. And what it looks like is basically you tend to have much younger people coming to the country than the older British people. So they're less of a burden on the NHS. You get so fewer people over 65. You get fewer people under 15. So there's less pressure on the schools. So it's not weighing on the big problem areas in the UK. It's a positive impact. The amount of housing required is certainly an issue. The number of households in Glasgow at 300,000, and that's the same as the government's target for building houses in any one year, and it's never in anywhere close to that. So the question around net migration is usually whether it should be lower or perhaps it should be higher. But perhaps what we should be looking at is what are we doing to match the infrastructure development in the locations where these people are living. Are they building more houses? Are we getting the roads together? They don't necessarily need more schools. They don't necessarily need more hospitals. We've got to try and work it out. But that is a huge way that the UK residential property market will be supported by immigration. You know, the US is built on immigration. Okay, we don't have to take up all the traits that the US has got, but it certainly is going well. And the UK has been built on immigration right back to the Silk District in Nottingham. That was a lot of the French and Belgian silk makers. Then you had the Huguenots coming over. Then you have this and that. So you had waves of immigration coming into the UK. It's added to the culture, which has made a fantastic cultural pot. And it's kept our jobs growing. And often it's a case of these people who are arriving are willing to do the jobs that your native Britons are not, which is pretty sad. So there we go. I hope you enjoyed that today. Thank you very much for watching. Do like, subscribe. If you're in Qatar next week, if you're in Qatar next week, then do come along and join us at the Marriott Marquis on the 5th for a networking evening with a variety of different property people, mortgage people, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much. Do take care. Cheerio.